because let's go to the game of the week. I'm so excited about this, Fresh, because I've been waiting to talk about this game all day long. I'm ecstatic that we're going to talk about this. The Kansas Jayhawks. They're 4-0. I'm dropping my pen right now. I'm throwing it on the table because I'm so excited about this. Rock Chalk Jayhawks, man. Listen, great job before we even get into the game versus Texas. Great job out of you, Jayhawks. You know what? Everyone under the sun questioned, you went 6-7 last year, 6-6, and I don't remember if they won their bowl game or not. But it's a fluke year. Oh, nice job out of you guys. And what do you do for an encore? You start off the season 4-0. And it's not like you've beat some slappies. Yes, you have 2 slappies on your schedule in Missouri State and Nevada. And you did just barely beat Nevada. I won't say that. But you had Illinois at home. You took care of business against Illinois. You faced a very good, I watched almost a good chunk of that Kansas BYU game again. That's a good BYU team. Much better than I really gave them credit for, especially as we were diving in. Very impressed with them. And Kansas took care of business in this game. I love what the Jayhawks are doing. They're balanced. They have a solid run game. With that being said, they're going up against the Texas Longhorns. They're my number 1 team right now in our top polls at the end of the week. Texas is a 17-point home favorite. Over-under is set at 62 points here. I think Kansas is going to take their first loss, but it's fun to play the what-if game here, Fresh. What does it do to college football if Kansas has a miracle? Because it's going to be a miracle game. I give it like a 1% chance of happening, but sometimes those long shots come in.
Well, there are 3 teams right now undefeated in the Big 12. Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas. 2 of those teams play next week in some big event, the Texas State Fair. And then we have the Kansas-Texas game. If Kansas wins this football game, that's Texas going in 0-1 in the league in the Red River rivalry. If they're 0-2, does that even take them out of the consideration? In my opinion, if they're 0-2, that's no playoff period. But they might even win the Big 12. So this is actually a big-time deal. Is Texas looking ahead to Oklahoma and not remembering to play and respect Kansas? Kansas starts with the 2 studs, Jalen Daniels at quarterback, Devin Neal at running back. But for this game, they're going to need a 3rd superstar to step up and show up in this football game. They need someone else outside the 2 of them to help supplement that offense and help generate a much wider attack, because they're not playing, like we said, 2 slappies where 2 dudes can go out there and run around like Michael Vick and tear it up. They need guys who are going to be able to help out their quarterback, help take the pressure off the running back, and attack a very good defense. Is it going to be other running back Daniel Hinshaw Jr., 235 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns? Wide receiver Lawrence Arnold, 246. Wide receiver Luke Grimm, 175 and 3 touchdowns, who is a big favorite target of Daniels. Or is it Quentin Skinner, the other receiver, has 173 yards receiving? Which one of those 4 players is going to step up and be that extra weapon for the Jayhawks? They're going to need all of them probably to really pull off an upset, especially when you go into Austin. They're not coming to Lawrence where, that's a sleepy little trip for Texas, and they've lost in Lawrence in the past. You're going to Austin, where that place is going to be lit on fire, ready to go. Everyone's going to be excited. You're going to have to show up, and everyone's going to be, all hands on deck for the Jayhawks and that Lance Leipold offense. So I'm looking at those guys. Which one of those guys settles in and helps facilitate and generate this offense and move it forward? We know what Texas is. This is the first. They have their quarterback, Ewers, Worthy, Mitchell. The list goes on, blah, blah, blah. And then you got Bevo sitting there in the pen in the back of the end zone. This is the first time Texas has been 4-0 since 2012. 2012. The expectations right now for Texas are sky high. You've already beat Alabama. You're undefeated. A loss could gut this entire program. How does this team handle and not look ahead to Oklahoma? Does this team mature enough to take care of business, take care of it from start to finish, and then march on to Dallas, get ready for Oklahoma, and take on the Sooners, who they beat 49-0 last year? and really announce Sark as got that program in the right spot. That's another key point. Do they look ahead? Are they prepared? Do they overlook Kansas? The reason why I say do they overlook Kansas because they've scored 50 plus on them the last 3 times they've played. But they're 2-1 during that period. They did lose one in overtime. They score a lot. Kansas defense, you've got to be better to give your team a chance because 50 straight points, 50 plus points in 3 straight games, that's pretty rough. I mean, you've got to give your offense a chance to score some points. You've got to be able to get a stop. And this Texas offense is, I think, better than it was the past 3 years. So where does Lance Leipold's defense make an appearance? Are they ready to go and be able to at least get a stop or two and limit the damage to keep their offense in the football game? Because we all talk about on the road, running game and defense. That's what travels. Can you bring those 2 elements in this football game and pull off an upset? If your defense doesn't show up, it's very tough to pull off an upset in the first place, no matter where you're playing. But if you can get both those elements ready to go and locked in, and at least get some improvement, if you could hold Texas to 40, maybe if your offense is clicking or you get a defensive score because you had 2 versus BYU, you might be in a good spot. But how do you be able to generate a full team effort? Can you get some stops? Can you play within yourself? Can you manage the clock? Can you take the air out of it offensively? Not score too fast. Maybe keep that offense on the sideline for Texas. What can you do to take the crowd out of it? That's also you run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, get stops, score touchdowns, you keep the crowd out of the football game. You can't give up 50 to this team because if you give up 50, it's going to tell everyone that you're still Kansas. If you can make it even more of a competitive game and maybe get your defense to improve, maybe it's a 42-37 or 42-30 game, it shows you've improved, and it shows that it's a different product there in Lawrence, and that you are definitely a team that's going to be sustainable going forward, not just this year, but next year and the year after. This is what I want to see from that Jayhawk defense. Balance out with your offensive superstars, show up on Saturday, and make it a full, complete effort across the board. Speaking of defense, I'm actually very impressed with Texas's defense this year. It's not just the offense that's been getting it done. And it hasn't just been this year. It's actually been going back to the beginning of 2022 season. Texas has kept their last 9 opponents under 30 points. The most they've allowed in the last 9 games is 27. And the last time they allowed the 27 was October 22nd at Oklahoma State when they lost. Ironically, that's also the last time Oklahoma State scored at least 27 points in a football game. So a lot of weird things happened that day. If you even go back to the 2022 opener, Texas has only allowed an opponent to score more than 27 points twice. That was at Oklahoma State and then at Texas Tech that same year earlier in the overtime loss. 17 games, the last 17 games, only 2 times they've given up more than 27. So it means this Texas defense is getting off the field, they're limiting damage, and they're playing very efficient, and they're tackling and they're forcing turnovers. This isn't some of those Texas defense we saw earlier in the 2000s where they were just getting run. They was just a bloodbath, and they were just guys scoring left and right. These guys are efficient. They tackle. They get after the quarterback. They own the line of scrimmage. They are becoming a very national championship caliber defense because they are so big up front, and they tackle, and they get after the quarterback, and they limit possessions. It's not just a fluke 1 or 2 games. They've been doing it consistently. And if they can do that versus this offense and then do it next week versus Oklahoma, watch out. The Longhorns are not just a Big 12 championship contender. They're a playoff contender because they've shown they can beat legit heavy laden offenses that can score points. If you have both, you're in great. Look at USC last year. We've seen it before. Teams have great offenses but no defense. What happens? They get wiped out in the playoff, or they don't even make the playoff. You have to have both sides, and Texas right now is showing on the defensive side of the ball they have it. And I think they show up to this football game ready to go and ready to take care of business. And one little antidote before I wrap up. Under Sark, Texas versus ranked opponents is 3-7. Only wins versus Louisiana, Kansas State, and Alabama this year. They have not showed up to play consistently versus ranked teams. Does that hurt them this week?
Fresh, I don't know if it's going to hurt them this week. The only thing that I could see them hurting this week is if they are looking ahead already to Red River and they kind of let their guard down, similar to kind of what they did with Wyoming coming off the big Alabama win. You saw that they were a slow start in that game. You better take Kansas seriously because this is all about respecting your opponent. And that's the one really, like, the great thing I can say at this is Kansas is playing with house money. Kansas has been on a heater on the craps table, and Kansas wants to go try their luck at a poker game here, and they're going in with the money of Vegas right there and sitting down. They're going up against one of the best poker players in the conference here in Texas, and guess what? It's going to be very difficult to beat them. The matchup I want to see right now, though, is Kansas has got a very good offensive line. It's what allows them to run the football, allows them to stay ahead of the sticks. They only faced 8 third downs against BYU. They kept the ball in front, got first downs, put up the points when they need to put up the points. They're balanced. They have a really good offensive line. Texas, really good defensive line, can cause problems here. Is Kansas able to run the football against that Texas defensive line? If they're not, it could be a long afternoon for the Jayhawks. But again, we're playing with house money here. Most people aren't picking you to win. I need Kansas to stay respectable in this football game. Lose by 14, respectable loss there. Texas, most people feel Texas has a lot more talent than you do. Anything under the 20, I feel like anything under 21 points is a respectable loss for them. And really, especially when you're at home at Austin for Texas, that 17 number, I'm going to go right at that 17 number. I got Texas by 17 because Jonathan Brooks is rolling back-to-back 100-yard games there. The receiving threats have been balanced. The question is which offensive receiving threat blows up in this game, whether it's Sanders, whether it's Worthy, whether it's A.D. Mitchell. Which one is it that's going to go off in this game? I think that's what becomes very difficult for Kansas is the back secondary. Are you able to completely lock down every single receiving threat? I think Sanders is the most difficult out of all of them, especially at the tight end position, running that little seam route up the middle. I think he does this. If Kansas, does Texas take Kansas lightly, though? That's the end question I have. If they don't, if they're looking ahead to Red River, Kansas could pull off the miracle of all miracles right now. I don't think Quinn Ewers is going to do it. He's been efficient. He's been effective. No interceptions on the year. Throwing the ball all over the place. Sometimes not playing in the fourth quarter. I think Texas rolls. I think Kansas looks good in this game. Give me Texas right at that 17 number. I'm right at 17 with them. I actually feel like 17 is like the perfect number. I almost feel like it's going to be a push play here. I'm going to go the under with the points, though. 62 seems a little bit on the high side for me. Actually, life's too short to bet the under. Give me the over for Texas, Kansas. They'll light up the scoreboard like a honky-tonk down in Austin.
Well, it's funny you say the 17. I honestly think Texas does cover. I think they win by 20. But I actually have them on. I'm taking the under here. 37-17 final. Win by 20, but we do not hit the 62. I think that they're going to run the ball out late, and the running game from Kansas will help limit possessions and keep them somewhat close.
Yeah, absolutely.